Hello, good evening, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round, and with it, another exciting afternoon of intense racing action in the middle of the pack racing league, falling to Porsche Cup Championship for 2025, as brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform, available only on PC, known as iRacing. We've arrived then at our season finale. It is time for round 8 of 8, and we're here in Australia at the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit. A circuit that arguably is underappreciated compared to many of its fellow country circuits, including the likes of Adelaide, Melbourne and Bathurst. It is a circuit that is situated towards the south of Australia on the island from which it takes its name, and goodness me, what a circuit it is. 2.76 miles in length, 12 corners at its core, and its main theme is elevation changes and sweeping bends with some of the latest apex you can ever chase. The aim of the game around here is to be absolutely pinpoint precise with entry and exit, and knowing exactly when to return to full throttle as you make your way beyond the corner apex, because every millimetre of circuit used is valuable in the run to the next corner. But get it wrong, however, and be too eager on the throttle pedal, and you may just understeer your way all the way to the grass, from which you may never recover, given the way the grass slopes away from the majority of the tarmac. But for those who are able to find the right balance between attack and keeping it conservative, they may just be able to come away victorious, and with it end their season on the ultimate high, and of course end their 2025 at the middle of the pack racing league on iRacing on the ultimate high as well, this being our final racing event of the season. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you to this post-round broadcast live from circuit side, and you're tuning in right now via one or two media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, you can be tuning in via YouTube at youtube.com and search for TX141TX, alternative Paul Walsh, and welcome to you guys and girls tuning on YouTube. And of course, we do have the alternative platform available. That's in the form of Twitch at twitch.tv/TX141, and welcome to you guys and girls tuning in via Twitch. Now, regardless of what platform you choose to tune in via today, the broadcast will be the same, and it's brought to you with myself in the commentary booth. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain as bit, depending on what media you follow me on. Now we bring you all your racing action as it unfolds. Now, to be clear, a bit of housekeeping. This is a post-round broadcast, so what exactly does that mean? Well, you are tuning into a live broadcast as we talk to you right now. However, the racing itself is not live. It occurred earlier this week on Wednesday the 26th of November 2025, but we're bringing it to you as if it were live this Saturday, being none other than Saturday the 29th of November. Therefore, we do not know what happens in the practice session that's just come to a close, or with 30 the upcoming race, of which we have the one and only race to complete the deal. There's no qualifying session, and we'll explain exactly how that grid's going to be set shortly, and therefore we do ask, of course, that no spoilers in our respective YouTube or Twitch chats, please, so that way it's going to be as close as possible to the raw live viewing experience for you guys and girls tuning in at home. And in terms of our schedule for today, times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinate Time, UTC, we can see that in just over 5 minutes time, we'll be making our way to the grid for the final time this season, not only to crown our Cup champions in the middle of the pack Cups in Pro and Am, but also crown our overall Drivers' Championships champions in the Pro and Am class as well. And well, some of it's already been sorted, but we've still got plenty of questions to answer, and without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's make our way into answering those questions, and start off, of course, by giving you a recap of what's led us all the way up to this point. Because as we can see, we've travelled around the world with an absolute brilliant set of 7 rounds of racing. We began the journey all the way back on the 1st of October at the Montreal Circuit in Canada. That was the commencement of the Middle of the Pack Racing League Cup, or the MPRL Cup, we could say. From there, we then made our way to the European continent, albeit for a brief period of time, and that was for the Portimao circuit in round number 2. After that, we then made our way to the United States of America for a double header, which began at Road Atlanta in the US state of Georgia, and then after that, we then made our way all the way over to the west coast of the US of A for the Long Beach Street circuit in round 4, and with it, our first feature race round of the season on the 22nd of October, and also there, we crowned our Middle of the Pack Racing League Cup champions, those being, of course, none other than Matt Best and also Shahi Zahair. Matt Best in Pro, Shahi Zahair in Am. But after a week's break, we returned to the racing, and that was the commencement of the Middle of the Pack Cup. We started off in Spain with another trip to Europe, albeit the Motorland Aragon circuit presenting itself there, and what a circuit it was, with sweeping bends and elevation changes catching many of our drivers out. That was the start of November, and we've carried on the journey through November by making our way to Japan for a double header. At Okayama in round number 6, it was a freeway fight at the very front of the field between the likes of Shahi Zahair, I should say, between the likes of David Addy, Julian Jones and Matt Best for overall victory there. And what a round that was. If you didn't catch it, we definitely recommend you catch up with the broadcast there. And in the Am class as well, we got to see a brilliant battle back and forth between Blake Phillips and Shahi Zahair. Indeed, nothing between the two. And last time out in round number 7 at the Twin Ring Motegi circuit, as it used to be known, now known as Mobility Resort Motegi, we got to see on the 19th of November in our final sprint race round of the season, Matt Best seal the deal with a defiant drive to victory over overall in the pro class, despite the intense pressure put on him by Jaden Callaway, and it enabled him to secure the overall Pro Drivers' Championship crown with a round to spare. And the big question will now be who is going to be the runner-up. Meanwhile, in the AM class, well, it was a second win of the season for Blake Phillips, ahead of Shahi Zahair, and he's kept his championship hopes alive. However, Zahair is the favourite, as you'll see very shortly when we come to the points. And it is here at Phillip Island for our second and final feature race round of the season, round 8 of 8, and the fourth of the rounds in the middle of the Pack Cup, that we will complete the story of the season. And indeed, it's been such an elegant season. How will it all end? Well, that narrative we're about to explain. But talking about our championship standings then, beginning with the Overall Drivers' Championship and specifically the Pro class, we can see Matt Best on 296 points to 220 at Tom Bryce. His lead is now unassailable for the remainder of the season, and that's why he is your champion-elect. So therefore, the question is, who is going to finish second? Both Tom Bryce and Jaden Callaway are here today. In fact, Jaden Callaway is not here today, so therefore it does look as though it's going to go the way of Tom Bryce barring exceptional circumstances, with Jason Landry not expected to be on the grid either, unfortunately, due to personal circumstances. And David Adeyi is here. However, he's got to somehow overhaul a 39-point deficit to Bryce. All Bryce needs to do is finish the race. Adeyi, meanwhile, needs to win the race and hope that Bryce drops the ball. That's your top 5, and then it's a further, 14 points there to Julian Jones in 6th place. He's only at 16 ahead of Daniel McConnell, with James Logston, Edwin Offrey, and Justin Braggan completing your overall Drivers' Championship for the pros. And we're very pleased to say that Edwin Offrey's back on the grid today, and indeed, we only saw him a little bit earlier on in the season for a round, but he's back here today to complete his year. And well, how can we blame him wanting to be on the grid once again? Indeed, he's been one of the stars over the last year of racing here at the Middle of the Pack Racing League, and we're very happy to see the Canadian driver here with us. But then coming on to the AM class, where we do see the leader, Shahi Zahair, 21 points ahead of Blake Phillips. However, with those 21 points, it's not all said and done. Both drivers are here today. Both are very eager to try and put on the best possible impression they can. However, Phillips is going to need the class win, and he's going to need to finish as high as humanly possible overall, and he's going to need Shahi Zahair to have a nightmare day at the office, and he rarely does have that. Mark Senegal is also in the hunt on 236 points. However, he's the outsider here, and the bigger question is, can he interfere and potentially take second place away from Blake Phillips, as Jermaine Warren is a further 14 points behind, and it's a further 3 points to Glenn Bratton. So it's very uncertain who's going to be finishing third, per se, in the AM class overall championship, whereas the battle for the overall right seems to be a little bit more certain. In 6th is Billman DaCosta, 33 points ahead of Nick Bader, and looking to be the favourite there to take that, with neither driver on the grid, with Aaron Lart in 8th place ahead of Carl Peterson. Then we have Joshua Dillon round off the top 10, with Anthony Piper best the rest in 11th, 3 points ahead of Jason C. Lynn, who we need to give a big shout out to, as whilst he's not on the grid today, you will have seen some of his presence already with the photos that we had in the build-up reel to today, and those being courtesy of Jason Lynn's company, known as Glass and Steel Photography and Design. A huge thank you to Jason for the absolutely brilliant photos we've had over the last couple of rounds. They really have been superb, and if you're into sim racing photography, do check out Jason Lynn and Glass and Steel Photography and Design. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we then come to the Cup standings, and in the middle of the Pack Cup, after 3 rounds, and of course this being based on the final 4 rounds of the championship, of which we've had 3 of them already, after the Mobility Resort Motegi, we got to see Matt Best extend his lead now to the best part of 43 points over Tom Bryce, and Bryce right now is going to be focusing more on finishing second, with David Adeyi and Jaden Callaway equal on point, but Adeyi ahead based on result count back with the win that Callaway does not have. Julian Jones sits in 5th, 5 points ahead of Daniel McConnell, and it's James Logston who completes the pro order, whereas in the AM class, meanwhile, it is Shahi Zahair who leads by 15 points over Mark Senegal, who's crept ahead of many of his rivals with the fact they've been inconsistent, not able to attend all the rounds. So Mark Senegal right now is the big driver to try and dethrone Zahair, but he's only 4 points ahead of Jermaine Warren, whose consistency has been absolutely admirable. Glenn Bratton is 6 points behind, and it's Blake Phillips a further 26 adrift, with Carl Peterson in 6th place ahead of Joshua Dillon by quite a significant margin. And then we do have Dillon only 2 ahead of Anthony Piper, and then it's Jason Seelin and Billman DaCosta who complete the AM Cup standings. And talking about our circuit for today, well, it was, of course, the Grand Prix round of the Phillip Island Circuit, located near the town of Ventnor on Phillip Island in the state of Victoria in Australia. And a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but the absolutely superb track maps that come with it. And well, the one thing about this circuit and the track map is a track map doesn't do it justice, because the problem is it's only 2-dimensional. We can't see the elevation changes, but you can see how the bends all sweep together. There's one incredibly long start-finish straight, and as our drives roar the way onto it out of turn number 12, they'll find a lap ahead of them is going to prove absolutely challenging to the task. There's no doubt about it, for as they roar the way through the sweeping right-hander of turn number 1, it's then going to be into the elongated hairpin of turn number 2, albeit it's a downhill exit, and as they make their way out of there, it's onto the flat for a brief period, flat out through turn number 3, and then hard onto the brakes to the much slower and tighter hairpin at turn number 4. The King of 5 gives way to a heavily cambered corner at turn number 6, and then it's uphill all the way through turns 7 and 8 and over the crest of turn number 9, only to be unsighted as they make their way downhill into the heavy braking zone hairpin at turn number 10. But with all the camber in the road at turn 10, there's plenty of opportunities there to go 2 or 3 wide as they exit out, then into the quick left-hander at turn number 11, and they'll sweep the way through turn number 12 to complete the lap and do it all over again. Now, in terms of rules, before we go racing, setup-wise, as per the whole of the season, drivers are running a fixed setup as provided by the Middle of the Pack Racing League administration. Fuel loads are restricted to 40%. Now, as this is a feature race round, it will be a bit different in terms of how we set the grid. There's no qualifying session. The grid order shall be set based on a class reverse grid, and this is taken from the latest Drivers' Championship standings. That is the overall Drivers' Championship, and what it means is that we will see the pros start ahead of the AMs, but the lowest placed pro driver in the championship standings starts on pole overall, and meanwhile the highest placed pro driver, so that's Matt Best, starts at the back of the pros, and then we rinse and repeat it for the rest of the field with the AM drivers, where the lowest placed AM driver starts on pole of the class, and meanwhile the highest placed one, Shahi Zahir, starts at the very back of the order, and that increases the challenge for all of our drivers involved. Now, each driver has 2 fast repairs available. Alternatively, they may be coming into the pits for fuel, or last but not least, if they receive a drive-through penalty for 15 or more instant points. Hopefully we won't see any penalties today. But with that, that's enough rules, regulation, everything in between, all here for the racing, so let's head back to circuit side. And as we do, ladies and gentlemen, well, our drivers are making their way onto the grid, and well, it is of course going to be a grid start, as Carl Peterson being one of our many drivers to make their way onto the grid. And whilst we can't show you a grid walkthrough, unfortunately, due to a technical limitation, we can tell you how they are all going to line up, and they will be lining up as follows. And what we will see in terms of the grid for today is that on pole position will be Edwin Nofre. He'll be taking pole as the lowest placed pro driver coming into this round based on the overall Drivers' Championship standings. And then we'll have James Logston alongside him on the front row for Bear Pope 0. Then we'll have Daniel McConnell, his teammate, well, not his teammate, the Texas Speed sim racing driver, albeit they've been rivals, but they've been so close in battling sometimes you would think they're teammates. Well, Daniel McConnell will be starting in 3rd, just ahead of Julian Jones. And then we will have David Addy and Tom Bryce on row number 3, 5th and 6th, ahead of Matt Best, your pro championship leader. He completes the pro starting order. We'll then have Jason Lynn starting in 8th place, ahead of Carl Peterson, and that will be your front row of the AMs, ahead of none other than Glenn Bratton and Mark Senegal, and then Blake Phillips and Shahi Zahir will complete that starting order and round off your 13-car field, with the AM championship leader all the way to the back of the grid. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the field is set. The lights are going on for the final time this season, and will the revs rise to 9,000 RPM? And as they do for our Porsche 992 Cup cars, it's lights out, away we go here as our drivers are all the way away, and the opening lap gets underway as quick as that. But as they make their way down towards turn number 1, well, Edwin Offers had a brilliant start. Julian Jones under pressure immediately for James Logston, albeit Jones has jumped up multiple places as well, so he's had a brilliant start, and in towards turn number 2 they come, but all the drivers safely through. Blake Phillips as well has had a brilliant start to his race as he looks now to defend versus Matt Best, who fell behind and goes wide. Best is off the road. That's not how you start the final round of the season. Albeit argued there's no pressure on Matt Best to take the overall Drivers' Championship crown, but he'll still want to try and take the Pro Cup where he can. And meanwhile, as all these drivers now make the way towards turns 3, 4 and 5 very quickly, we're seeing plenty more side-by-side fighting as that Mark Senegal and James Logston together. Logston on the inside, and Logston right now very, very slow here at the start of this race. I think trying to build himself up as he has to put an elbow out there to make sure Mark Senegal can't find a way through. So Senegal falls backwards, and Shahi Zahir, he's already made his way from the very back of the running order up to 8th place. Unfortunately, it does seem as though David Addy, who was meant to be on the grid, unfortunately has not been able to make it onto the grid due to a technical issue with the car, so therefore it's a non-start for him, and we've had a retirement before we went green flag racing as Best and Carl Peterson, well, they both had offs at turn number 2. Best had a bigger adventure, but he goes around the outside there, Peterson, and takes the place back for 11th. But as they make their way up the hill, down the hill come a few drivers, and Blake Phillips here looking up the inside of, well, in fact, that's Mark Senegal trying to make a move on Blake Phillips there for the lead of the AM class, and Senegal on the inside going from outside to inside at turns 10 and 11, and around they come, and well, I think Phillips here is going to have more compound worries to worry about, because up the inside goes Shahi Zahir, and Phillips needs to beat that man if he wants any chance of taking home the AM honours today. But as they make the way across that timeline, now it's going to be a drag race down towards turn number 1. Will Phillips look to go for the move? No, he won't. He'll tuck back in behind, instead be the patient man as they head in towards the right-hander. But behind him is Jason Lynn, and Lynn as well, he's not been the fastest driver in the class in the second half of the season, but he's definitely been a very consistent driver. And as we briefly lose Jason Lynn, hopefully that's not a sign of some drama to come. Well, we do apologise that for something that's happened there to Jason Lynn. He has come back, albeit briefly left us, and has now re-emerged from the ether. Well, he's lost out there to Blake Phillips and Shahi Zahair when he was very close behind. But meanwhile, speaking of close behind, here's Edwin Offray, who's got close on his behind Julian Jones. And coming out the hairpin once again, and Offray using all the road. Jones, meanwhile, being a bit more conservative with his lines there. And I would imagine right now that for Julian Jones, he's trying to protect the tyres a little bit, given the fact that with these races, we are expecting drivers only to pit for fuel, not for tyres. And therefore, protecting the tyres is going to be absolutely paramount. Because on a full push, the tyres on these Porsche 9 and 2.1 GT3 Cup cars will only last the best part of 15 to 20 minutes. I suspect it will be more towards the 15-minute side here at Phillip Island, because you've got a lot of high-load corners. And, well, that's a move there from James Logston, albeit is it complete, because Bryce at the end, we did have the opportunity to put it back on the inside there into turn number 10. But Bryce decides not to go for it, and Mark Senegal and Shahi Zahair now fighting over the AM lead. Now Zahair, and starting from the back of the field, he's very quickly made his way into second place at the AMS and 7th overall, but now he's got the task of trying to find his way past Mark Senegal, who is not an easy person to overtake, to say the least, as they make their way down the start-finish line straight. And we can see Blake Phillips now onto the back of Zahair, and towards that braking zone he comes. Does he look for the move? No, he doesn't. Zahair goes defensive either way, so Blake Phillips is allowed to take his natural racing line. Meanwhile, Zahair is going as defensive as he can as they come up towards turn number 2, and you see Phillips here looking for the switchbacks at every corner, decides to go nice and wide on entry into 2, whereas Zahair meanwhile to park it on the inside, and Phillips gets a lovely run off the apex. But the problem is now he's got to have the overspeed here. Does he go for it into turn number 3? He's going to think about it here. 2 wide they enter, but this will put him on the outside for the hairpin at 4, but on that outside line he will have more width to use compared to Zahair. He's going to have a very tight exit line, but Phillips then can't maintain the pressure all the way around the outside, so therefore he does have to relinquish it. But that goes to show you the fighting back and forth between these drivers. It's continuing to build here as they now make the way up the rise. It's been a very intriguing first 2.5 laps. Got plenty of battles going on. We've also got some replays to give you with regards to incidents from earlier on in due course, ladies and gentlemen. But right now, all of our drivers continue to push forward. And some absolutely brilliant battling, no doubt about it. As Best here fighting with Jason Lynn and finds his way up the inside there, coming over the crest of turn number 9. And Best finally moving up into 9th place. And on a recovery drive here, again, all he needs to do today is secure some good points, and he should be taking home the middle of the pack Cup. And well, the idea being in the Pro Class there that he will take the whole trio of what will be the Oval Drivers' Championship, the Middle of Pack Racing League Cup from the first half of the season, and then the second cup, the MOTP Cup. And well, he'll be walking away from this one with the ultimate honours, and really he will have been the man to beat in the Porsche Cup machine for the whole of this season, and our first ever adventure into the Porsche Cup, our fastest machine that we've ever run at the Middle of Pack Racing League. And right now Matt Best seems to be the one who's tamed it best as he makes way around the outside of Blake Phillips there into turn number 1. Well, Phillips there didn't fight it too hard, because I think his bigger focus is in trying to close down Zahair, and he'd rather have Best act as a little bit of a bulldozer rather than trying to act as a roadblock versus the Texas Speed Sim Racing driver. But Best immediately gets a good run out of turn number 2. Zahair there being really caught out with a slow exit, has to go defensive straight away. Zahair right now is not in a happy place with this guy as the ITT West Senior Vice President's 209. And what you can tell is as they make the way through the hairpin, Phillips very brave around the outside there. The problem that Zahair's having, I think, he's just not quite accustomed to how much load is in these medium to high speed corners at the start of the lap. As Best gets it wrong, goes sliding sideways across the road. Everyone's able to react very well. I think Best there just a little bit too close to the back of Senegal's car, and perhaps a premature downshift there coming through turn number 6, costing him the rear axle. But meanwhile, as he's getting himself all stabilised once again, coming back to our point, I think Zahair just not feeling quite settled in at the moment with regards to these medium speed corners. They are very hard to get right in any machine, and keeping in mind that in the real world, racing around here is done by a whole variety of machinery, all the way from the likes of Mazda MX-5s through to GT3 racing machines in the GT World Challenge Asia and Australia. So therefore it is one of those circuits which does definitely keep everybody guessing, and it is made for a whole variety of cars, albeit its prominence is with regards to Australian V8 supercars and also racing on 2 wheels with superbikes. But meanwhile right now Now, these drivers on 4 wheels, they're keeping it interesting as, once again, Blake Phillips looking around the outside, but this time, he does make it too wide into turn 1, so here comes Phillips. Zaher backs off on the inside, can't find a way in, and we ride on board here. Can he find a way? No, he can't find a way to go all the way around the outside, so Shahi Zaher does have to give up in second place in the AM class and falls to third, but there now Blake Phillips has the absolutely unenviable task of trying to chase down Mark Senegal, who has been allowed to very gradually inch away little by little up the road. However, that could all be for naught, because Blake Phillips now will have to show to the world what pace he's got at his fingertips. Albeit we've got a very long way to go in this race. It's a 50-minute race compared to our usual 35 minutes, and therefore, understandably, you would imagine that Zaher right now and Phillips will both be looking at the bigger picture as well. That has been one of their strengths all season long, and why they have been the top 2 in the AM class. It's not just their outright pace in qualifying, but their ability to extract that pace lap after lap as AM drivers, and that's what's kept them ahead. Albeit Mark Senegal has gradually found his way in the Porsche Cup car as the season has gone on, albeit he did struggle in the first half of the season. But the Sunday GT Turtles 227 driver has now seemingly got it dialed in a little bit better, and since then he has become the 3rd contender for wins in the AM class, albeit he's yet to take a win, with 2 of the wins going to Blake Phillips and 5 going to Shahi Zaher. But you never know, come the end of the day, he may score his one and only victory for the season. And it's a great way to do it in the season finale, because you can say you have the last bragging rights. As he gets close to the back of Tom Bryce, who's not got the best of speed out to turn number 12. Well, here comes Senegal down the start for straight. Bryce puts himself in the middle of the road, says the Sunday GT Turtles driver, I'm not going to fight it too aggressively, but you are going to have to work your way round me if you want this. And in the end, Senegal does make it work. As Best, meanwhile, the Texas Speed Sim Racing has out-dragged Shahi Zaher into turn 1. I suspect Zaher's been a little bit compliant there for the pro driver, and therefore Blake Phillips now has the problem of Matt Best inching closer and closer. But with the opening 8 minutes of this race complete, and we've still got plenty more time to go, don't worry about that. Well, we are going to take a look back in time at some of the moments from early on in the race and try to understand what went wrong and what went right for so many drivers. And here we go, starting with some off-tracks for James Logsdon and Matt Best. Now, as they made the way in towards turn number 2, this was Logsdon at the helm and the focus of your camera, Best behind him. Logsdon, in the end, on the brakes, just slipped slightly wide, and in the end was able to get it back together. However, what exactly happened to Matt Best? Well, here he was making his way off, because the car directly behind Logsdon, of course, was Daniel McConnell, Best's teammate. Can we get the on-board from Matt Best to see exactly what went wrong? I think we can, and here we go. This was the on-board, and as he made his way in towards turn number 2, let's listen. All the speed in the world, but unfortunately he did not slow the car enough. You could tell as soon as he started to know that the front right tyre was going to dip to the grass, that's when he dropped from 4th to 3rd, and I think that was the proverbial, oh, I'm going off the road now. I definitely know I'm going off the road. But for Matt Best, did very well to keep that together, did not make a mistake in terms of rejoining either. Smart move in there. We did, of course, have the off for Carl Peterson directly behind. Now, towards the end of the lap, this is what happened to Glenn Bratton. In fact, this was on lap number 2. I should correct myself. He made his way into turn number 2. Does he do the same as Logsdon's Best? No, he doesn't, because that is, in fact, on the exit of turn number 12 at the end of lap 2, and he just decides to trim at the yard a little bit there, and we're just carrying a bit too much speed before going on to lap number 3. But still, easy mistake to make, and we make our way back to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen. And, of course, this race in action only available through replays as a result of Arturo Mayorga. So as we come back to your live racing, well, still more to come, no doubt about it. And we come back at prime time as well, because what we can see here is that Mark Senegal right now under pressure from Matt Best, who's keeping close and trying to push, probe and prod for 5th place overall. Now, for the uninitiated, the drivers, regardless of their class, are encouraged to fight each other for overall position naturally, because points are scored on an overall position basis first and foremost, and that's a move up the inside there from Best. The Senegal in the end misinterprets just how quickly Best will go for the move, and in the end gets caught a little bit shy by it and manages just about to stay on the road. Well held that man, I say. And right now they head in towards turn number 11. Well, he's got the rest of the top 3 of the AM class right behind him. Phillips and Zaher are breathing down him, and as they roar the way into turn number 12, well, there comes the end of this lap. We've gone to plenty more, and the battle is well and truly on as Blake Phillips now is starting to feel a bit more comfortable for the pickup sim racing after passing Zaher. He's not dropped the ITT West Senior Vice President's driver, but what he has been able to do is show that he can hold on to that second, and as Zaher doesn't have to try and find a way back through immediately, but now Phillips has to find a way past Mark Senegal, who can make a car very wide, even though he's not the fastest driver out there. That is one of Mark's strengths, is the fact that he knows exactly where to put the car, and he does have a brilliant tutor at Sunday GT Turtles in the form of esports professional Jason Landry. And indeed, a number of the drivers you see on this grid, particularly in the pro class, have raced at the very top level in esports racing, including both Jason Landry and Edwin Offred, both competitors in the Toyota Gazoo Racing Esports Series. And well, as we do see Phillips there trying to look for the move, gets a little bit close under braking, and I think he's been hypnotised a little bit there by the back end of Senegal's car. And well, there's nothing on the back there to distract his eyesight, but the problem is because he's focused so hard on the car in front of him, I think there where he really wanted to brake versus where he actually broke were about 3 meters apart, and that's why he went so deep into the corner, following the Porsche in front in. It's a very easy mistake to do. A lot of drivers do it, even the very best out there, when then they spend so much time focusing on not hitting the car in front and trying to get closer to it, that they actually look at that car more than they look for their natural braking points, and realise in the concertina effect you have to brake a little bit earlier because of the effects of dirt air and overspeed caused by slipstream. But as Phillips there goes a bit deep out of turn number 10 and into 11, what you're really seeing on this onboard as he slides sideways there for 11 is just how tricky it is to get the power down here at Phillip Island. Even in a Porsche Cup car, that has done the best part now of 8 laps of racing, and where it's got all the tyre temperature in the world and also brake temperature. And the thing is, these cars of course do not have traction control. They have no TCS and they have no anti-lock braking system or ABS. And well, this is the final time as well you will see in the middle of pack racing the Porsche 992.1 Cup car being used, because it is being replaced on the iRacing service as a 2026 with the Porsche 992.2 Cup car. And well, Blake Phillips there makes the irreplaceable mistake of running wide. Does he keep it together? Yes, he does. And as he does so, the Pit Club Sim Racing driver rejoins, but he escorts himself all the way down to 10th place overall. And with 4th place in the AM class, the Shahi Zaher has been released now. But can he find a way to catch up to Senegal? That's going to be the problem that only he can answer. And right now, Mark Senegal, well, whatever he's doing it right, because he is not looking perturbed at the very front of the Anfield. And Blake Phillips there making an innocent mistake, to be fair to him, which was just simply carrying a bit too much speed for turn number 2, much like what we saw for James Logston and Matt Best right at the start of the race. Well, as Zaher now gives chase, we look to Matt Best and Daniel McConnell, who immediately swap places there, heading up the hill for turn 7 into 8 and 9. And I get the feeling there that might have been a word over the radio between the two drivers, and not being unfair to Daniel McConnell, he has been the slower member of Texas Speed Sim Racing this season, but they are very cognizant of each other, the two teammates, and therefore they always try to work together. And that's not to say McConnell's not had some exciting racing, to be fair. He put on a very good display, I do believe, all the way back in round number 5 at the Motorland Aragon circuit, and we also got to see some great driving from him and what was round number 3 earlier in the season at Road Atlanta. So therefore, with Daniel McConnell now falling backwards a little bit, Mark Senegal is under pressure in 6th place, and your AM leader finds Shahi Zaher right behind him. Has to go defensive into turn number 1, so Zaher's had a much better run out of turns 11 and 12 to set this up. He's going to go around the outside. Can he get to the inside into 2? He's going to go for it here. Senegal on the outside. Zaher's not going to back down here. Senegal looks to the switchback, but Zaher gets it done by looks of things. Now he's got to get the power down, but a little bit of power oversteer out of turn number 2. That could upset his rhythm in towards turns 3 and 4. It could cost him a couple of miles an hour, albeit if it has, Senegal's not able to capitalise. And Shahi Zaher right now, the man who wants to take home the overall AM Drivers' Championship. And with it as well, the middle of the pack cup. Well, he's done a very good job of doing so right now. And if Williams were to finish as they currently stand, he would take all 3 of the trophies for this season. And Senegal, meanwhile, well, he needs to finish a little bit higher if he wants to try and pit Blake Phillips to the runner-up spot. With Phillips in 4th and Senegal in 2nd. Right now, the run-up spot would go to Blake Phillips with certainty in the overall Drivers' Championship. Senegal would be your run-up in the AM Cup Championship, if my mental maths is correct. As they come around and up the hill again, you can see right now whoever gets the head of this AM pack doesn't feel comfortable in running away, and I wonder whether all of these drivers are really hunters rather than preferring to be prey, if you will. Some drivers enjoy being chased, whereas others enjoy the thrill of the chase. It helps them proverbially lock in, if you will, and not start making mistakes. And that's one of the things as well. Everyone has a different mental driving style as much as they have a physical driving style behind the wheel, where some enjoy the mentality of really knowing there's a car in front of them. It gives them something to hunt down, whereas others, meanwhile, will struggle seeing a car right in front of them because it distracts them and it causes them to lose sight of their braking zones. I'll put put my hand up and say that in my sim racing days, I'm one of the latter. I prefer a clear track in front of me. I used to struggle very heavily when I had a car directly in front, and indeed the fact that in the end I had to teach myself not to focus on the car in front and just simply be aware that it's there. But other drivers, meanwhile, when they see a car in front of them, it almost gives them an extra 10% in driving ability just because they want to chase it so aggressively. But either way, right now, all these drivers, well, they're putting on an absolutely brilliant show in the AM class, no doubt about it. And Tom Bryce, unfortunately, he is the wolf amongst the sheep because he is a pro driver. You can tell that, not just on the time on the left-hand side by the blue sash against his name, but also you can see it on the car with the blue windshield banner. And also, what you can see is the wing mirrors there. They're in blue rather than orange. The orange representing an AM driver such as Jason Lynn directly behind, and you'll also see it on the door cards. But pros and AMs all intermingled together, and as we mentioned earlier, the fact that these drivers score points first and foremost based on overall finishing position. There are bonus points in the AM class of the podium places, 3 for first, 2 for second and 1 for third, but everyone wants to go for the big juicy 50 points for the overall win in the race. And indeed we have over the last couple of years seen the occasional feat where a pro-am driver has taken an overall win. The very first driver to do so, of course, was in the Radical Series back in 2024, if I remember correctly, and that was done by none other than Ilya Speaker. But meanwhile, as we do see Tom Bryce trying to channel his way on through, well, Jason Lynn and Blake Phillips still here together for now. But you have to wonder who's going to crack first. Bryce seems to be very vulnerable here as they make their way down the start-finish straight. Struggling on the exit of turn number 12 a little bit, and the slipstream helping Lynn out. So Lynn looks up the inside. He's going to go for it. Bryce puts himself in the middle. Blake Phillips, meanwhile, with more to lose, risks it for the biscuit, and in the end slides loose there. And Lynn on the outside now. He couldn't quite make it work. Bryce put himself right in the prime spot. He put himself in the dead centre of the road, and in doing so has forced the two AM drives to fight each other. And Phillips in the end will get the move on Jason Lynn, who backed off there, not realising that Phillips was right in the prime spot to make the overtake. And Blake Phillips now moves up into third in AM. That's a good recovery move. He's still got more to do, however. And whilst that's coming to its end, meanwhile starting to build up is James Logston versus Matt Best. Best has been waiting and chasing for a very long time, but he's now finally there and on to the back of the number 42. And right now into the Texas Speed Sim Racing driver, who has become very familiar in battling with James Logston over the last 2 years. He's got to look all the way around the outside here. Logston defends, but right now Best has just got so much more confidence in the car. He's going to go over the crest and down into the hairpin. Logston turns in. Best there, a little bit of rub between the two of them. And in the end, Logston goes out wide. I don't know if he was pushed, but right now I can definitely tell you that Matt Best has made his way up into third. And James Logston, in the end, we tried to close the door, but Best went all in for the move, and he's made it work. We're going to get a replay of that shortly to take a look at how exactly it was all done. But Matt Best, in the end, making it happen. And now up into third, chasing after Julian Jones and Edwin Offray. Meanwhile, further back, that's Blake Phillips gone to the grass. That's on the exit of turn 11. That's on the inside of the circuit. So Blake Phillips has scored himself round. I don't know how he's managed to do that, but thankfully, through the powers that be, we can now quickly get some replays, ladies and gentlemen. And we start off with the battle between Matt Best and James Logston. So this was making their way all up the rise, and as they made the way in towards turn number 9, well, Bestian had the confidence to go round the outside, but the big question mark is, was there contact between them at turn number 10? This was the hairpin then, making the way onto the brakes, came on down, and I think there was a little bit of contact there. Best was in his rights to be there. I think Logston tried to squeeze him, but in the end, I think both drivers just realising the cars were a little bit bigger than perhaps they expected, and that's what led to the touch. And this was the on-board from Best's perspective, and well, absolutely thrilling, no doubt about it, when you're battling side by side for these sweeping bends. So up the hill he went, and at this point committing to that outside line. He'll know that Logston's lost out a little bit initially, but then the natural ebb and flow into the braking zone they went. Let's listen. And a tiny touch between the two there, and I think Logston opened up the steering as much as possible to make sure that it didn't end up with one of the drivers spinning onto the path of the other. So great respectful racing between them. We then had this for Blake Phillips. This was only moments afterwards. This was Phillips making his way over the crest of turn number 11, chasing after Tom Bryce and just lost it with his own volition. Jason Lynn in the end taking to the grass to avoid the Wayward Le Pit Club Sim Racing Porsche. And well, for Blake Phillips, a bit of a frustrating moment, but gets it back together and gets his head back in the game immediately. Back to your live racing we go. So as we come back to plenty more racing action, no doubt about it, well, we do see time moving on. We've already completed the best part of 20 minutes of racing. We're on to lap number 14, and we've got another 30 minutes plus a final lap to go. And Mark Senegal and Shahi Zahair, they have swapped places, and since then, in the AM lead, Shahi Zahair has already checked out. He's opened up a 3.5 second gap. Mark Senegal has not been able to respond, and indeed he's now got Daniel McConnell behind him. And in fact, I think McConnell's lost out to Mark Senegal and Shahi Zahair over the last couple of laps. That's happened off camera, and Tom Bryce is closing behind the second of the Texas Speed Sim Racing cars. Through the right-hander of turn number 4 they go, and all the way to the front of the field. Meanwhile, we haven't really talked about him since the start of the race. He started on pole and he's led every lap so far. Is Edwin Onofre in the very played dedicated livery machine. Well, as he makes way in the 99 towards the end of this lap, Julian Jones is trying to stay with him. The lap times between these two have gradually been leaning in the favour of Edwin Onofre, but not by much, to be fair. And Julian Jones right now is throwing everything at this, but the one driver who's the fastest of the top three is the third place man of Matt Best, who having passed James Longston after a very tense battle through turns 10 and 11. Well, right now, Best is on a mission. He's got 8 seconds to close down versus Jones, and on that Onofre was a 32.482 for Jones, a 32.195. Best a 32.078. Longston a 32.388. That shows you that at least on that lap, Best the fastest in them all, closing Jones down by a tenth, closing Onofre down by 4 tenths. And the natural progression, well, Best is going to need to trim at least about 3 tenths a lap if he wants to be in an attacking position by the end of the race versus Julian Jones. So he's got a bit of work to do, but also keep in mind we do have that one pit stop to consider as well, and the pit stop could be quite crucial when it comes to gaining or losing time to your rivals, as now everyone really settles in for the long ride. But from then we look all the way to the back of the field, and Glenn Bratton's just had a lap put on him by none other than Edwin Onofre, your race leader. And Bratton had that slippery start to the race where he slid off the road at turn number 12 on lap number 2. Well, in the end, he's lost out a little bit, and also had a bit of an off track on lap number 3 from what we're hearing. We didn't quite get a replay of that, but he does let Julian Jones on through there, and he has already made a visit to the pits as well, as Daniel McConnell is into the gravel. Now, that's at turn number 6. He's run very wide there as he brings a load of gravel onto the circuit with him. So Daniel McConnell, in the end, will distribute in the gravel and decide to encourage everybody else to play sandcastles. Albeit he's not done that intentionally. It's just the natural after effect. When you go to the gravel, you are going to have to rejoin the circuit at some point. And Daniel McConnell now falls to 9th place. Having started quite high up the order, things have gone backwards for a bit, but now he'll be trying to get his head down and move things forwards. He's lost out to Tom Bryce, who he was chasing at the time, and Jason Lynn has been able to get past him as a result. Now, Jason Lynn here, your third place AM driver. Well, he's looking to hunt down Bryce as they come through the final corner. And as he makes one through, we can give you an on-board lap, ladies and gentlemen, what it's like to do a lap of Phillip Island's Grand Prix circuit, brought to you by Jason Lynn. Then down towards turn number 1, the long opening right-hander from 6th gear. He'll dab the brakes and bring the weight to nose and gradually drop the speed to enter into 5th gear. Exits the corner at 130 miles an hour and now hard on the brakes here in towards turn number 2 and gradually winding down as we briefly lose him for a moment, winding down to 3rd gear and with it down to 85 miles an hour at the apex. Flat out now all the way in towards turns 3 and 4, taking a lot of exit curb there and getting hooked onto it. Through the fast left-hander, flat out, and then stamping on the brakes here, albeit not to trigger a lock-up, but braking at the 125 metre mark and all the way down to 2nd gear. Out the hairpin, it's now a quick run over to the left-hand side before the right, and through turns 5 and into 6 he goes. On the brakes once again, trail braking off nicely here, keep it nice and tight in 2nd gear, and then use the camber of the road in order to push out the corner. A bit of gravel there helps the car go a bit wider, and through turns 7 and 8. Flat out through the left and into the right, and now getting ready for turn number 9. This is all about car positioning here and confidence under braking. From 5th gear, he'll drop to 4th, then gradually down to 3rd. Lets the car run a little bit deep in the dirty air, and then over the crest, completely unsighted, and then sunny it appears. The hairpin at turn number 10, but by that point, you've already got to brake. You have to brake about 150 metres from corner apex. Now going in towards turn number 11 here, a very brief run. 2nd gear, the wheels will spin up if you push too much throttle in. But for Jason Lynn, no such issue, but he decides to duck into the pits rather than commit to turn number 12. And as he does so, well, that was the majority lap brought to you by Jason C. Lynn for Glass and Steel Photography. And meanwhile, Shahi Zahair stays out there, whereas everyone else has gone in, and Tom Bryce does the same. So we have 2 drivers are going to go an extra lap, but otherwise everybody else, they've decided all to come in on call, and I suspect that is really to try and split the race into 2 equal halves as much as possible. But also on top of that, the fact the fuel tank will have been begging to be refueled, as Julian Jones comes out right ahead of Edwin Onofre. Onofre is still in the pits at the moment, although Matt Best is going to leap Onofre as well, and Onofre has finally finished being serviced. And I think Onofre, whereas everyone else has put fuel in the car, I wouldn't be surprised if Onofre, with an extra 10 seconds in the pit stop, has opted to change tyres as well. And I think it might be just a couple of tyres that have been changed, but given the amount of aggressive wear to the right-hand side tyres in particular, with this circuit being anti-clockwise, it's got more left-handers than right-handers, and it's got a lot of high-load left-hand corners. Well, the idea would be that taking that new set of tyres is going to give him a lot more traction once he's got them up to temperature and give him the confidence to attack and be the fastest driver out there. But the problem is, first, he's got to make sure that James Logsdon doesn't find a way through, because Logsdon's over the back of him like a bad rash. And we ride on board with the Bear Pope Zero driver here, the 42, which has not had things go his way in the second half of the season in many respects. Right now, he's playing the game of watch, wait, and listen for an opportunity. But Onofre, once he gets himself dialed in, I think he will be gradually the break away. As you can see, the gap at the moment is half a second. It's not coming down. Shahi's ahead into the pits in the lead overall and in the AM class. And Tom Bryce most likely will be in within about 9 seconds' time. Have the fuel tanks to be expected, and indeed I just look out my commentary booth window and I can see Tom Bryce is now starting to make his way down as well. But you're on board here still with James Logsdon as he chases after Edwin Onofre for 5th on the road, but strategically we do believe this is the fight for effective 3rd place. Let's get that right, as Logsdon in the end doesn't get that right at all, coming out of turn number 11, runs a little bit too wide there, too eager with the throttle and exit, and will in the end steps wide and has to lift off. He keeps the car pointing in a straight line, well done to that man, but he has lost out as he just manages to avoid losing out. So Shahi Zahara emerges from the pit lane, not too far behind him. Tom Bryce is still being serviced, but I suspect he'll be out soon. Mark Senegal makes his way onto the start-finish straight. There's Bryce. You can briefly see him leave in the pit lane. But Senegal comes on down. Will he get out ahead of Bryce? It's a critical moment if he does. Yes, he does. It gives him clear track to chase after Shahi Zahara. As meanwhile, Jason Lynn has not been able to jump ahead of Tom Bryce, and he's still stuck behind him, much like he was before the pit stops. And in the end, the undercut from Jason Lynn has not rewarded him at all. The gap is still 7 tenths between these two as they make the way onto lap number 18 with all the strategy now complete. Carl Peterson is ahead of Blake Phillips, and well, Carl Peterson is here where Blake Phillips having some difficulty, and we have had a big incident, I believe, for both Glenn Bratton and also Daniel McConnell. Glenn Bratton has had to tow to the pits, and we've also had a tow to the pits for none other than Daniel McConnell. We'll get a replay of those moments if we can very shortly, but right now let's take a look at how the field stands then after the pit stops, and with 22 minutes to go plus the final lap. And what we can see, Julian Jones is still leading, and well, right now doing everything right as he's made his way into lead as a result of being second before the pit stops, and Edwin Onofre taking extra time in the pits, and I think to change tyres as well as put fuel in the car. Julian Jones has picked up the pieces for IT West. In second is Matt Best, who's come all the way through from the back of the field after an off track at turn number 2 on the opening lap. He's made his way to second and he's hunting down Julian Jones at a rapid rate of knots. That last lap he just took 3.5 tenths out in for Texas Speed Sim Racing. Edwin Onofre, the privateer, sits in third with the freshest car of them all. He has broken the gap to James Logsdon up to a second, so therefore I think he's got the tyres in the operating window now, and with the fuel as well, he's confident he can perhaps chase down the two leaders, but he's got to keep pushing to do this, with James Logsdon currently for Bear Pope Zero sat in 4th place and seems not to be able to move forward anymore in this race. He's pushing hard, but unfortunately the Phillip Island Circuit is not rewarding him for his attempts. Shahi Zahara, he's 5th place overall, but more importantly, your AM leader. And right now, things were to finish as they currently stand, he would become your AM overall Drivers' Championship winner for this season. He's ahead of Mark Senegal by 8 seconds as Zahara makes his way there through the turn for hairpin. And here's Mark Senegal making his way to it right now, 8 seconds behind. He led for the opening 15 minutes of the race, but then lost out to Shahi Zahara in a brilliant battle between the two of them through turns 1, 2 and into 3. And Zahara was able to get ahead, and Senegal had no reply. As Tom Bryce sits in 7th place, meanwhile, ahead of Jason Lynn. These two fighting each other still for that 7th place spot, with the Pro Drive ahead of the AM driver and the Glass and Steel photography driver of Jason Lynn, keeping close to the IT West machine. He can't quite find a way in to make that manoeuvre. Carl Peterson for Caboose Crew, he sits in 9th now. He's ahead of Blake Phillips as Phillips has fallen down the order with some difficulty. But as they come on around, right now Phillips is continuing to try and recover in this race, albeit he's got quite a bit of work to do. And Blake Phillips opted to change tyres in the pits, much like Edwin Onofre, and I think that's to give himself the freshest possible start in this second stint if he wants to try and go on the attack. Remember, for Blake Phillips, he needs to beat Shahi Zahair, and Zahair needs to drop some major points for Phillips to become your AM Drivers' Champion. And also the same does apply in the AM Middle of the Pack Cup, when Mark Senegal needs to beat Shahi Zahair, and Zahair needs to drop some key points in order to steal it away. But that's your running order, with Daniel McConnell still in the pit lane, with repair work ongoing to the car. And unfortunately, we have lost Glenn Bratton from this race. Oh, no, we haven't, in fact. We lost him off the circuit, we should say. We just come up there on our data. There's a glitch on our tower on our end, ladies and gentlemen, not on yours, what you're seeing. But we can confirm that Glenn Bratton is still running out there, 6th and last of your AM drivers after a bit of difficulty, as he does take overall position off of Daniel McConnell there, as now he puts Daniel McConnell as well to being 3 laps down. But that's how all the field stands, and with that, we are going to take a look back at what did happen to Daniel McConnell, and here's a replay of how he had to tow to the pits. So this was McConnell making his way down into turn number 10 at the time. Through the hairpin he went a bit wide of apex, got the throttle down, the car snapped one way then the other, and then he just had to tow to the pits. I wonder if something was damaged on the car there. Perhaps he's hit a curb earlier on. But for Daniel McConnell, something not right at all. And in the end, well, it was towed gradually after a time. And a bit of a frustrating one there for Daniel McConnell. We also had this for Glenn Bratton. Now, does this explain what happened to Glenn Bratton? And the answer is no. So, unfortunately, we don't have any footage to explain why Glenn Bratton had to tow to the pits. But we're hearing it may have been a technical issue with the car. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we go back to your live racing. And as we do come back, still time, of course, for moments to happen. It's never over in motorsport until they reach the finish line. And even then, it may not be over until they get to the steward's room after the racing. Albeit it's been a very clean race so far. We've had some absolutely dicey moments, but all fair moments with that. And speaking of diciness here, the closest battle on the circuit, we're going to stay with it for a bit, is Bryce versus Lynn, where Jason Lynn, the attacker, and Bryce, the defender, as they come through turn 1 and into turn 2 again. What can Jason Lynn do differently? That's the problem he's got, because Bryce right now, well, he's doing everything right in this situation, which is just simply hold track position. Now, Phillip Island is not an easy circuit to overtake at, but overtaking opportunities are plentiful, because the way you have to try and battle at this circuit is you either need to be brave under braking it into the hairpin, such as turn number 4 and also turn number 10, but also it's the idea of pressuring your rival into a mistake. And as soon as they make the tiniest mistake around here, even if they even run millimetres wide, it'll feel like running inches wide at other circuits around the world, because this circuit does have a lot of grass around it, and the grass normally slopes away from the racing surface into several gravel traps. And the idea is, once you put a wheel wide, the car's momentum gradually carries it more and more off the circuit, and by the time you finally get control of the car, you either got to lose all your speed, which means you lose places, or if you don't sacrifice your speed, you're going to be taking a rallycross line and you will be off the road for the best part of 5 to 10 seconds. Tom Bryce right now, he's not making mistakes, he's just keeping his head cool as Lynn continues to try and follow him. And well, the problem is, of course, running that dirty air so closely for Jason Lynn, it's going to make every corner just that little bit more difficult to find the right turning point, also to carry the speed. And on top of that as well, the front tyres in particular will be getting increasingly hot, because he's not able to run the car in clear air to cool the tyres nor the front brakes. Bryce, meanwhile, has that advantage to him, but as they make their way down the start-finish straight, the slipstream there very prominent for Jason Lynn as he looks around the outside, but Bryce just puts the car right to the inside of turn 1 and says, no you don't, once again, and they stay exactly as they are. But from then, we come back to Carl Peterson versus Blake Phillips. Phillips right now looking to try and take 4th place back in the AM class, and 9th with it from Peterson, the Caboose crew driver here in lovely liveried Tag Heuer machine. Through turn number 1 he goes, but you can see Phillips right now has got a bit more pace in the tank. But the thing is, he might have all the pace, but getting close is a problem. And as he almost runs wide there through turn number 2, well, thankfully able to keep it in track limits and converts what's a deep run into a massive cutback there. And now here comes Phillips looking for the move. Peterson cuts the inside of turn number 3. He'll put him on the outside for 4, and Blake Phillips knows that. He goes all in here, does Blake Phillips. Hard on the brakes. And in the end, Carl Peterson, he's not going to be able to get the switch back in time, I don't think, because Phillips runs a bit wide there, but that's by design to give him the inside of 5 and 6. And in the end, Carl Peterson, for as much as he tried to set that up for a counter-attack, Blake Phillips managed to get the exit out of turn number 4 and not be truly threatened. So, brilliant bit of manoeuvring there from both drivers and great fighting. Blake Phillips up to 4th in AM, now 9th overall. And whilst all that's changed, we come back to Julian Jones right at the front of the field. And for your race leader at the moment, as he heads through turn number 2, Well, the exciting thing here for Julian Jones is that the ITT West driver, albeit I don't think he'll be too happy about this, even though he loves battling, but he'd love to be able to just walk away with this lead and take the win. He has got Matt Best very quickly approaching. That last lap, Matt Best was 6 tenths faster by comparison. Best right now is absolutely flying out there, and you can see those lap times at the bottom of your screen, albeit some of them are glitched out in fact there. But what we can see is that as time has evolved, we have gradually seen what is the ability for Julian Jones to get quicker and quicker, and therefore that is what's really demonstrating the fact that Matt Best right now is on the attack as much as he can, because Jones is hurrying, but Best has simply said that right now he's the fastest driver out there and nobody's going to beat him. Although saying that, Edwin Onofre on the last lap was 3 tenths faster than Best. Those new tyres that Onofre decided to take, given the fact he did have a 3-second advantage before the pit stops to Julian Jones and an extra 7 seconds to Matt Best, well, he gambled on spending an extra 11 seconds in the pits with losing the places, but with the fresher right inside tyres on this car, if not all 4 tyres, he is now definitely closing the top 2 down. So we're going to have a three-way fight for victory right at the end of this one, but it's all going to come down to who catches whom first. If Onofre catches up to Best first, then I think Julian Jones will be breathing a sigh of relief. If Best catches up to Jones first, however, then Onofre will very quickly find himself most likely in a three-way fight, but with the fresher tyres, he will be able to pick them off much quicker if they condense each other together. That is going to be the question mark in terms of who catches whom first, as Best just strips another 7.5 tenths out of Jones. Onofre, meanwhile, does not match Best on that lap, but he does take 4 tenths out of Julian Jones. So right now, Edwin Onofre, I think there's a little bit of inconsistency creeping in as he's pushing harder and harder, but understandably, I think he's trying to get the most out of the car whilst he can before those tyres go away from their optimum window and they start to fall into the clutches of a much older tyre. And as we said earlier on, these Porsche Cup tyres, they are good if you push them to the maximum for a maximum of 20 minutes, although at Phillip Island you're more towards 15 minutes for the amount of loading on the circuit, and also the fact we do have a relatively high track temperature for this time of year, which is to be expected because it is the summertime in Australia, in the summer hemisphere. Meanwhile, of course, in the northern hemisphere, in the likes of the United States of America, it is winter time. The seasons are reversed, and therefore it really is Christmas in summer. And right now, who's going to be taking the turkey and the tinsel? Well, it has been Thanksgiving recently as well, and happy Thanksgiving to you all tuning in today, regardless of where you are in the world, and I hope you had a good time celebrating. But right now, can Edwin Onofre celebrate at the end of the season with a win, or will Julian Jones find a way to hold on? Or will it be Matt Best and his incessant and insatiable thirst for points? He's already your overall Drivers' Champion in Pro. He is already one of your 2 Cup Champions in Pro, but can he get enough points to guarantee he's going to take all 3 crowns? Well, he's 12 minutes away from securing that destiny, and if he finishes where he currently is, he'll definitely do it as well. But from them, coming back to the AM leader, Shahi Zahir currently in 5th. Right now he has maintained and he's stretched the gap to Mark Senegal. In fact, he's opened up that gap on what has been the previous couple of laps by about 6 tenths on average a lap. And as Mark Senegal comes to the timeline this time, Shahi Zahir delivered a 32.74. For Senegal, it's a 33.09. So the gap continues to expand, albeit that time expanded by the best part of 4 tenths there. So Mark Senegal right now, for as much as he's huffing and puffing, unfortunately it's not good enough to be able to blow down the pace of Shahi Zahir. And I think Senegal's going to settle for second, as meanwhile Jason Lynn is still chasing after Tom Bryce. And whilst Bryce is keeping her at bay, Lynn doesn't have to worry about Blake Phillips getting close, because Blake Phillips, whilst he is matching Lynn for pace, he's still 15.5 seconds behind. So Jason Lynn right now definitely seems to be absolutely set for 3rd in the AM class. The only thing for him is, can he find a way into 7th place overall and take it away from the pro driver Tom Bryce, who has been absolutely immovable so far. And that's simply because Bryce has stuck to his guns of clean lines, smooth driving, and Lynn is the one who's got to do the hard work. As they head up the hill, back from them to the front of the field we go. And to your leader, Julian Jones, who completes his 25th lap, goes on to lap 26. Best now 2 seconds back. 32.05 for Jones. Best a 31.80. Onofre, meanwhile, it's going to be none other than 32.49. So Onofre that time around, slower than the 2 of them. So I wonder whether or not... Oh, goodness me! And I was going to say, I wonder if Onofre's made a mistake. Well, he definitely has just made a mistake there. Runs a bit wide out of turn number 1. Onofre pushing hard. He really wants to catch up by thinking how hard he's pushing. He's actually pushing himself into errors here. And right now, the 99 driver, who was an absolute demon in the LMP3 Championship hosted by the Millpack Racing. Indeed, many of you remember there his absolute monster form, such as at Imola, where he was in the all-red machine. And one of the home circuits for Ferrari then, it was a coincidence distance he was running red colours. In fact, I think he was running the variant of the plaid livery that he does have here today. Well, right now, the number 99 driver absolutely pushing it to limit, but unfortunately those limits coming back to bite him. But that's the way it goes. Sometimes it works out for some, but not always. And James Logsdon 10 seconds behind. Well, he's in fourth, but he is being caught up to by Shahi Zahair. It does seem as though Logsdon is struggling a little bit. And well, could we see a fight between himself and the AM Championship leader in the closing stage of this race? If so, that's going to be intriguing, because Zahair right now would definitely love to scrap with one of the biggest names in the pro class over the years. Well, is he going to be able to do so in that 2:09? Has he got enough tyre life left in which to tempt fate and go all in for it, or does he play it smart and safe? That is only something that he can decide. Meanwhile, down in the pit lane, I can tell you that Daniel McConnell is still in the pits. I don't think we are going to be seeing the Texas Speed Sim Racing driver make his way back out there today due to technical issue with the car. But meanwhile, one driver is having no issue in pumping out some incredible laps. Matt Best, a 31.494. You don't normally do those laps in the mid-portion of the race. You normally do those at the very start with these tyres. But Best right now is finding a huge amount of time out there. And well, with that, he's got the gap down to a second to Jones. And if he gets any closer, he's going to be really starting to feel a distant toe here as he heads in towards turn number 4. So Best right now is the man on the charge. And well, who can blame him? He's got the time. He's got 9 minutes. That's going to be worth this lap, plus at least another 5. And right now, Best wants to take that win overall. He wants to end the season with a complete set of victories. Well, he's not won every racing class, but he's come close to it. And as they come in towards the next sweep of turns 8, 9 and 10, well, right now Julian Jones is definitely looking vulnerable. In fact, that gap has already come down to 6 tenths here, and that's the slipstream. It's really now starting to favour the chaser as they get in towards the hairpin. Best already looking to the middle of the road there, and you can see he's really picking his place on the road. Best right now is so confident in this car. I think, well, whatever he's done in terms of practice, the team have done a brilliant job with Matt to find out exactly where he needs to go with each and every lap, because the pace right now and the confidence in the car is so revealing when he can be looking all over the road behind Julian Jones. And Julian Jones has not been going slowly, to be fair. His Best there makes his first mistake in a long time, running slightly wide out the final quarter. But Best right now, it's almost as if he's saying, I've got so much car to play with here and so much pace to play with. Julian, I'm coming for you. You better be looking both left and right. But Julian Jones gets a nice run out of turn number 1 to make sure the gap expands for a little bit. But Best here right now, I think, just starting to build up the psychological pressure. And if he can, he'll get Jones to make a mistake of his own doing, and that'll make things a lot easier rather than going side by side. Although Best has already demonstrated today in his battle through the field, he's not afraid of going too wide with drivers, and more so than James Logsdon, of course, in their brilliant battle into turn number 10, come at the end of the opening 13 minutes. As Best here stays nice and close. 4 attempts is the gap, but that gap is coming down as they make their way through the middle sector, and this is where he gains the time. This middle sector of the lap is really where Best feels the most confident in the car, and where it's absolutely revealing, because you can see the exit out of turn 6 into 7 and 8. The slipstream here also adding to the advantage. But the problem is, with Best being this close, he has to lift off there. He can't go full throttle, as otherwise he'll either tap the rear of the car in front or he'll understeer off the road. And the number 11 driver right now over the rise. 2.5 tenths into the braking zone here for turn number 10. It's going to come within the next couple of laps. That's my gut feeling, ladies and gentlemen. But where exactly is Best going to go for it? That is the question that we'll wait to see an answer to. But as he roars his way out of turn number 11 into 12, the advantage out there is absolutely huge. And we're down through 12 he comes then. Is he going to look for it into turn number 1? Gap is 2 tenths. Jones, to be fair, does open up the gap a little bit. Best does have to lift there at turn number 12. That's a weakness he has. He hasn't quite dialed in running that close out of turn number 12 and exactly how to get the power down on exit. So Jones is safe just for now into turn 1. 6 minutes left on the clock. We're on a 29th lap. But it is so close between these two. And Julian Jones, well, he's going to be thinking more now the fact that he's got to try and hold Best off for the best part of several more laps. So he's got to make himself wide at the times that truly matter. And the thing is around here, as we said earlier, defending here is highly possible because there are certain sections where there's only real one feasible line, but it's also at moments like this, at the hairpin at turn number 4, when you've got to pick where you're going to put the cars. Do you hold the race in line and hope the driver behind you doesn't dive? Best didn't go for it there. I think he had an opportunity to, but I think he only realised it too late. Or do you put yourself on the inside and cover off the attempt of an overtake, only then to lose the momentum in your racing line for the next sequence of corners? There's no one right way to defend around here, and every way you do it has an advantage and a disadvantage. Shahi Zahir has found his way past James Logsdon, who's had an off track there at the hairpin. We're going to replay that very shortly, but meanwhile we come back to Jones and Best. As Shahi has moved up into fourth place, the AM leader is continuing to climb. His next target will be Edwin Offre, who he is 8.5 seconds behind. And Offre's pace has in fact slipped away a little bit, although Offre has just set a 31.7 on the previous lap. So Offre's got the pace, but unfortunately it's not consistently shining through, and like what Best has been able to do. And well, this lap ends, and with 5 minutes left, Jones is still leading. He's still holding on, but he's holding on by a hair and a dream here in the 33 for IT West Interns Pro Esports Division. Can he hold on for this lap plus another 3? That is the task that awaits him, and it is not an easy task here. Indeed, any battle running multiple laps is not easy, but especially so when you have the fastest man of the season right behind you, and you've got to try and prove a point to him today, which is, yes, he may be champion, but he's not going to end his season with victory. He'll have to settle for second, and Julian Jones wants to bring home his first and only win of the season, but here comes Best up the inside. Jones has to go defensive there into the braking zone, and as they do, it's too wide on entry. Is it going to be too wide on exit? The answer is yes, but who's going to have a nose ahead? Best in the end, he tries to go for it, but a slight slide there, a little bit of power oversteer, and Best has to fall back, so he does attempt it for the first time, but Jones, of course, opened up the door by going defensive out of turn 3 into 4. He had to, but Best is back there again. Now what Julian Jones has got to do at this point is keep the battle going. He's got to get Best to overheat his tyres, and if he can, he'll reset Best back behind him, but the problem is, does he make mistakes of his own at this point? He has to try not to, because if he does, he'll overheat his tyres as well, and that's all going to come down to who can outlast the other in this battle. It's going to be attrition here, all the way to the finish line, as Best gets so close there he could touch the rear wing of his rival, albeit he's not allowed to do that, of course, otherwise there would be a penalty and a fine. But as they come out of turn 11, in towards 12, right now Julian Jones is holding on just that little bit more as we ride on board with Best. Going through turn 12. Does he get it right this time? Does he find the way to get the launch out the corner? Yes, he does. It's a much better exit this time. Wiper on there to get some of the gravel off the screen. And as he gets close towards turn 1, he inches closer and closer and closer. Does he go for it? No, he doesn't. He's not quite there. If he'd been half a tenth closer, he would have gone for it, most certainly. So he has to back off. But he's going to have 2 more chances at this over the laps. But he goes, oh no! And Best gets it wrong. Carries too much speed into turn 2. And that's it. Surely that's got to be it. Best runs wide. He repeats what he did right at the start of the race, albeit with not as big consequences, but Julian Jones right now has been gifted a 4.5 second lead for his perseverance, and Jones right now, all he's got to do is not make any mistakes all the way to the finish, but immediately a small lock up there on the front left brake for Julian Jones into the hairpin. Surely right now ITD West are going to be on the radio to him saying, Julian, don't throw it away. You've absolutely earned this. All you got to do is keep it on the track for 2 more laps after this one. He can turn the wick down even and still be safe, but as he makes a mistake, Tom Bryce right now and Jason Lynn, they're still together. Only 3 attempts separating them, and Bryce right now, well, he's absolutely withstood the pressure from Lynn lap after lap. Lynn has been there since what has been approximately lap number 15, and indeed they're going to spend 2/3 of the race in this configuration, and Jason Lynn, for all the pace he's got in clear air, in the dirty air, Tom Bryce, he just cannot find a way, and I don't think he's finding himself close enough to have the confidence to go all in the brakes, and that's not to the detriment of Jason Lynn, to be fair. That's the problem. He can get within 2.5 attempts, but after that he just hits a brick wall of hot air, and what it means is he just can't get any closer. Like what you've seen with Matt Best struggling behind Jones, it is the same here. Bryce right now, all he's got to do is not make an error, and it's for Lynn to find a magical way of getting on through, but that may not be possible as our leader has just got onto a 32nd lap, and with it, that will be the penultimate lap of the race. We will get 33 laps in, given he had 1 minute and 35 seconds left, unless he intentionally tries to extend the final lap, which I definitely wouldn't recommend he tries to. I'd recommend he sticks to his pace all the way through. That will be at the end of the run, but hold up a second. We've had something go a bit wrong there for Julian Jones. I think he's had an off. Jones has had an off at turn number 2, and Matt Best is right back with him, so there's going to be this lap plus 1 more, and Jones right now has made a mistake. Best is back with him as quick as that. And as they come out to turn 4 in towards 5 and 6, well, Best right now, well, no, he's not got any time to try and go for this. He's going to wait, and, well, in fact, he's got to go for it as quickly as possible. He can't afford to wait, and as they exit the corner, there goes Best. Then he's got the exit out of turn number 6, but Jones has got the inside into 7 and 8 as they come up the hill. But Best right now is going to sweep around the outside. They run side by side, but Best in the end gets the apex of turn number 9 first. Does he nail it under braking? He almost loses it. Best almost runs wide. Here goes Jones. He slides sideways. Jones is back into the lead, and Best loses out. Best takes the lead literally for a sliver of a second, and suddenly it slips out his grip as if it's covered in butter. And right now, butterfingers or not, Julian Jones is leading. They've got 15 seconds left on the clock. I think we have got a 33rd lap. I'm not seeing the checkered flag come out. I'm seeing the white flag down the start finish straight. One more to go here. Jones versus Best. It's for bragging rights. In fact, that's it. That is the end of the race. The checkered flag does come out, and Julian Jones has done it. He takes his first win of the season ahead of Matt Best, who seals the deal as your overall and middle of the pack Cup Pro champion for this season. And Edwin Offred will take 3rd place in the end ahead of Shahi Zahair, who comes to the finish line and takes the AM victory, and with it becomes your AM champion overall, and he wins the middle of the pack AM Cup. It'll then be James Logsdon in 5th place, in a bit of a lonely and frustrating end to his season for Bear Pope 0, with Mark Senegal a further 12 seconds behind as he completes his journey to the runner-up spot here in the AM class, and that will seal him 3rd in the overall AM Championship, and 2nd, I do believe, in the Middle of the Pack Cup Championship, ahead of Tom Bryce, who withstood the test of Jason Lynn. They're 7th and 8th, with Lynn taking 3rd place in the AM class. Well done to him. And then we have got a couple more drivers still to get to the finish, and here is your runner-up in the overall AM Drivers' Championship of this season, ladies and gentlemen, with 2 wins, but unfortunately missing the podium today after a difficult race at Phillip Island. Blake Phillips, well done to him. He does take 9th and 4th place in AM, but 9 in the end. He just could not tame the Australian circuit. In 10th, behind him was Carl Peterson. Here's the Caboose Crew driver who celebrates making it to the finish. Always good to see him out there having a good time. And then the last of your finishers will be, even though he's 3 laps down, give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. He deserves it much like anybody else out there today. It's your private hit of Glenn Bratton, who didn't give up despite technical issues with the car and makes it to the finish, and is your 11th and final finisher of this one. And a solid drive there for Glenn Bratton, no doubt about it. And on a different day, it could have been a more successful day. But as he decides to play sandcastles in the gravel, we see Tom Bryce there celebrating the end of the season, and with it trimming up some of the grass. And indeed, all the drivers here having a celebration for the end of the season, which is absolutely lovely to see, as we do get to the blimp camera there. And Matt Best surrounded by his peers in the pro class, indeed the entire grid, and everyone congratulating him on taking his first ever overall Pro Drivers' Championship trophy. In the fact, of course, over the last couple of years, he has been second best either to James Logsdon or to Jason Landry. But here today, and also I should say to Edwin Offred as well, but here today, he has proven over this season that he has been the #1 pro out there. We also see Shahi Zahair there celebrated as well, his AM title, taking all 3 titles as he biffs the car of Carl Peterson. And to be fair, they won't be too upset about that, because these cars are being retired for good as we move on to the Porsche 992.2 Cup car next year. Should be having another Porsche Cup Series at the Middle Pack Racing League. But Zahair really has been the one to beat all season, and well done to him, as Mark Senegal meanwhile favours doing a little bit of the donuts there on what is the start finish straight rather than the grass, and well, he enjoys himself as well, as they all do. Let's take a look to the scenic view, and with it, let's take a look to those race results subject to any steward's inquiries. And as we can see then, after an absolutely brilliant 50 minutes of racing in round number 8 of the Fall Into Porsche Cup Championship for 2025, brought to you on iRacing, hosted by the Middle of the Pack Racing League, Julian Jones was your overall winner, taking his one and only overall win of the season for IT West Interns Pro Esports Division, and a brilliant effort there from the American driver ahead of Matt Best, who in the end hounded him, harassed him, but could not find a way past him. And the Texas Speed Sim Racing driver in the end, under so much pressure to make the move by the end of the race, well, he cost himself the opportunity by running wide at turn number 2, the corner that cost him right at the start of the race. The privateer of Edwin Offred returns to the grid today, and where it took a 3rd place, he had all the pace on clear tyres, but he didn't have the consistency to match it, unfortunately, and we didn't get to see him battle for the win come the very end. But the 99 driver still held on to the final spot of the overall podium, and we're 3rd in pro, head of Shahi Zahair, your AM winner, and the IT West Senior Vice President's driver delivering an absolutely superb drive all the way to the finish. We then did see Bear Pope Zero's James Logsdon take home that 5th place in the end, and well, a bit of a frustrating end to the season for Logsdon. Definitely not been on the pace here today, but still he'll look to that in a future season, ahead of Mark Senegal, your run-up in the AM class here on circuit, and the Sunday GT Turtles driver will be pleased to be back on the podium, but will be a bit gutted to have lost out on the win. And in the end, he just did not have an answer to the supremacy of the pace of Shahi Zahair. We also got to see there in 7th, Tom Bryce, ITOS Interns Pro Esports Division, holding off Jason in lap after lap and limbed through everything at it all the way to the finish, but he couldn't quite find a way to make his way through, but still took 3rd in AM there, and he'll be pleased to be on the podium of the AM, so the Glasses Still Photography and Design team. Hello Blake Phillips of the Pit Club Sim Racing, who all went wrong for and went backwards for in the opening stint, and he couldn't quite recover. He was 9th and 4th in AM, ahead of Carl Peterson, the Caboose Crew driver who round off your top 10, and there was 3 laps down to your last finisher of Glenn Bratton as classified, and the priority then being followed up by the non-finisher of Daniel McConnell for Texas Speed Sim Racing, with something breaking on the car and seemed towed to the pits, and the team couldn't quite fix it, and we saw your non-starter of David Adeyi for IT West Senior Vice President. He didn't make it to the grid, unfortunately, and therefore he did become the second of our 2 retirees. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that's a rundown of our final results in the racing this season. And with that, well, of course, we have got to wrap up, but before we get to wrapping up, we do of course need to talk about your championship winners and your cup winners. Now, I have been informed that the results that you have seen are final, in the fact that we did not have any incidents reported and no stewards inquiries from this round, and therefore we start with the middle of the pack cup, and after the final 4 rounds of the season, we say a huge congratulations in the pro class, firstly to Matt Best, who takes the middle of the pack cup on 197 points over the 144 from Tom Bryce, where Bryce holding on in the end to 2nd place ahead of Julian Jones, with David Adeyi matching Jaden Callaway, but it will be David Adeyi here in the end who takes 4th place based on result countback with his wins to Jalen Callaway's, and then James Logsdon, Daniel McConnell and Edwin Offrare completed the cup standings of the pro class. Well done to Matt Best, and meanwhile in the AM class, well, you've probably guessed it, Shahi Zahair, and you would be absolutely right. Zahair in the end taking the cup with a 19-point gap to Mark Senegal, who managed to finish the runner-up ahead of Glenn Bratton, who in the end, by finishing the race today, guaranteed his 3rd place ahead of Blake Phillips. Jermaine Warren took 5th ahead of Carl Peterson, with Jason Lynn, Joshua Dillon, Anthony Piper and Billman DaCosta completing the cup standings. And to reiterate, a huge congratulations then to our middle of the pack cup winners, and they were in the pro class firstly, Matt Best for Texas Speed Sim Racing, and in the AM class it was IT West Senior Vice Presidents Shahi Zahair. A big round of applause to them, and it does mean that they have taken both of the cups for this season, both in the first half and the second half of the season, the MPRL Cup and also the MOTP Cup, and well done to them both. They've been absolutely faultless. We're now coming on to the overall Drivers' Championship standings, and as we can see, after 8 rounds of racing with a drop score applied, in pro, it was Matt Best. It was already sealed and done coming into this round, but Best in the end was the one to beat, and well, in the end, he didn't let anybody beat him, taking the crown in the end by almost 100 points, one of the biggest gaps we've ever seen a champion crowned by. Tom Bryce in the end, he had a very strong first half of the season, and in the end, whilst he may not have been on the pace in the second half of the season, he didn't give up, he kept in it to win it, and has been rewarded with the 2nd place spot ahead of Julian Jones, who had to settle for 3rd in on 217 points ahead of Jaden Callaway. Jason Landry, well, in the end, he finished in 5th place, and Landry, well, in fact, I should correct myself and say I said earlier, Jason Landry was your middle of the pack Racing League Cup winner in the pro class earlier in the season. I do apologise for that. Bit of a mistake there. So Jason Landry at the end, he may have taken the first cup of the season, and with it, well, he managed to finish 5th with only points for the first 4 rounds, with David Adeyi in 6th place at 181 points, a point behind, ahead of James Logsdon held by 17 points. Daniel McConnell was 18th ahead, not 18th, goodness me, 8th ahead of Edwin Offrare, and it was Justin Braggan who completed your pro overall Drivers' Championship standings. In the AM class, it was none other than Shahi Zahair, who after an absolutely relentless set of rounds of race, it took 6 wins to the 2 of Blake Phillips, and that is why he's your AM champion for the Fall Into Porsche Cup Championship for 2025. Mark Senegal, he had a close run in as well, particularly in the second half of the season where he started to really build up the pace, but then he had to settle for 3rd, missed out to Blake Phillips by only 8 points, and it was Glenn Bratton a further 24 behind, but ahead of Jermaine Warren. Billman DaCosta formed the second half of the field, 30 points ahead of Carl Peterson in 6th, with Peterson 7th ahead of Nick Bader by 3 points. Aaron Law and Jason C. Lynn were joint 9th on results, 71 points apiece, but it was Aaron Law who finished ahead of Lynn based on result countback, with Joshua Dillon and Antti Piper 11th and 12th and completing the standings. So big congratulations to our overall Drivers' Champions for this season. And to reiterate, it was Matt Best for Texas Speed Sim Racing in the Pro class, and in the AM class, it was Shahi Zahair for IT West Senior Vice President. So it does mean that for Matt Best, he took 2 out of 3 of the titles. He took both the overall Drivers' Championship crown and also the Middle of the Pack Cup, with Jason Landry taking the Middle of the Pack Racing League Cup for the first 4 rounds of the season, that going the way of the Sunday GT Turtles driver. And in the AM class, it's 3 from 3 for Shahi Zahair, who takes both of the cups and also the overall Drivers' Championship crown. Congratulations to all of them, and a huge thank you and congratulations to all the drivers who competed this season, whether they've been on the grid for all 8 rounds or just some of them. They've all made up the grid and delivered a fantastic 8 rounds of racing. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, it does mean it's now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about the Middle of the Pack Racing League community, well, for all that and more, we definitely recommend you check out and join the official Discord. Invite link available on screen. And there you can join one of the friendliest and most welcoming sim racing communities around the world, primarily based out of the North American continent, but it has had drivers from around the world competing in its series over the last 4.5 years, and you won't find a more welcoming community if you want to get on the grid to have some absolutely superb racing action on a weekly basis. Alternatively, if you're a bit more of a social media person, you can of course follow us on Twitter, and that's at twitter.com/MOP Racing, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news and announcements from the Middle of the Pack Racing League. But that means, ladies and gentlemen, that is the conclusion of not just this championship, but our racing for 2025. Goodness me, what a season it's been. We've only had 2 championships this season. We've had the Fall Into PCUP Championship for the second half, and of course we did have, at the start of the season, our regular Winter GR86 Championship. But that's all we've had time for here at the Middle of the Pack Racing League for 2025. But do not fret, because we will be back in 2026 for even more exciting racing action. It's all still being planned, to be fair, by the organisers, but we will be back next year. And when we do, there's plenty more to look forward to. But with that, it is time for us to say goodbye for this year. Thank you very much for tuning in. As always, ladies and gentlemen, we have been the Middle of the Pack Racing League, and I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, also known as TX11 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And on a personal note, I'd like to wish you all a great rest of 2025. I know we are the best part of a month away from it, but when it does come around, we wish you a Merry Christmas, and I do indeed here in the concept booth wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year going into 2026. And well, when the racing does return, I'll very hopefully be back behind the microphone, bringing you all the racing action as if it were live in the Middle of the Pack Racing League. But until then, and the next laps we turn together, ladies and gentlemen, that's goodbye from us all for now. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, as always, like our drivers, remember to stay on track. Good night.